Joining me now is the National Security Advisor to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Dr. Charles Omole, who is also a member of the Presidential Working Group on Police Reforms in Nigeria. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very sure you would have been perturbed by what we are saying. This is not the Nigeria that a lot of us dreamed of. A lot of persons are agitated. We have terrorists on our streets, all looking for safety when they are supposed to have been kept in this facility. And the facility was just attacked, just like any other one that we've seen in other parts of the country. How worried are you?
Well, I mean, it is worrisome. And I think if you look at the insecurity in Nigeria over the last, say, decade, there is a common factor in all our insecurity, and the government, even though they are doing some other things, are not doing what I think needs to be done, and that is failure of intelligence. You see, any nation's security are sort of like a three leg it stands on. One is what I call the security infrastructure, which is the weaponry. Second is the security personnel, which is the training, the welfare of the officers involved. And third is intelligence. Now, the government have been doing fairly well in those first two. We'll be buying physical, weaponry and all that stuff. But the biggest problem is intelligence. And our intelligence problem started maybe around the mid-70s. And it hasn't been addressed properly since then.
Is it with the decentralization of the security system?
Exactly. With the carrying out of the special branch away from the police.
Of the Nigerian police.
Exactly. And that's now to this SSS. So what now happens is Nigeria has give or take about 21 MDAs that relates to security. That's the largest in Africa. So that's 21 silos that hold information. And one left hand is not talking to the right hand. So we have a situation in the country where there's all array information everywhere, but there isn't anyone by law or by executive order aggregating all those information to create intelligence.
Isn't the National Security Advisor supposed to be the clearinghouse for all of this information, working with the National Intelligence Agency, working with the DSS, the Director of Military Intelligence and all of that, at least being the clearinghouse for all of this?
Well, I mean, in theory, but in practice, it doesn't happen. There is a joint intelligence board that's supposed to meet within the Office of National Security Advisor. Sometimes for a whole year, they don't meet at all. And then you have a situation where there is no element of compulsion. I've been in meeting with DSS or with police and I said, okay, have you told the police? They said, no, we are not sharing that with them. We don't trust them. So we have a situation where there's no compulsion to share intelligence. So I might have 10 information, I give police only 5. Because I think they can handle that 5, the other 5 I keep. That shouldn't be the case. A very good
especially for the elite forces. If they aren't sharing intelligence among themselves, the DSS and all of that, why would they be sharing such an intelligence with the correctional center, Nigeria Correctional Service, so to say?
Okay, let me give you an example. During the Jonathan presidency, I don't want to go to specifics, an incident happened. So the president called the head of DSS. Said, what happened? He said, we gave it to the police. We gave intelligence to the police. They didn't act on it. Second time, same thing. But the third time, Jonathan was reported to have asked the DSS boss, can't you guys do anything about it? That was when the DSS went away from just being an intelligence gathering organization to now having their own foot on the ground, their own tactical team. So rather than pass intelligence to police, they now actually action intelligence themselves. They now have personnel, and they created a tactical unit within the DSS for that purpose. Now, what that's simply done is entrench silos. So the police are even less informed of what's going on within the security estate. The challenge is that this was a situation similar in the US prior to 9/11. As at last count, the United States has about 18,700 police departments. So everybody can form their own police in the US. So what they now did after the 9/11 is through the legislation that created the Homeland Security Department and the Patriot Act was to put a security blanket over the country. And that security blanket has no human interaction. It means every police department must connect their computer system with that of Homeland Security. So every night, all that information is harvested centrally. from all the police departments. So if you stole in Texas 4 days ago and you're traveling from Washington 4 days later, they will know you stole 4 days ago. So that level, so that's not leaving it to the discretion of one officer to press a button to send the information. The information is automatically sent.
Automated.
We don't have that in Nigeria. So we have a situation where we have little information here and there, which on their own looks harmless.
Yeah, but our defense correspondent actually said that there was some actionable intelligence that was sent to the correctional service, but unfortunately not so much was done about that. And we could, from what we have heard as Arise News, that when the firepower of the terrorists was just so much, some of the soldiers and police and even civil defense personnel had to just camp out for safety themselves.
Yeah, you see, the thing about intelligence is that it's bi-directional. And part of the problem we have in Nigeria, there is the outward-facing intelligence, which is the security estate getting information from outside. But the bigger problem, I think, in Nigeria is the inward-looking intelligence. In my estimate, 5 to 10% of personnel in our security estate are moles for the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, we see that happening
even
in the
Chief of
Nigerian
Defense Staff
Army.
said so just 2 weeks ago.
We see some army personnel being arrested for sending information
that
to
is
the enemy.
problem we have. I mean, the military was even much obvious. I mean, I remember in the days of the super camps, you know, for about 3 weeks, they are low in weaponry, nothing happens. Then one day they come to stock, they bring an inventory of stock of weapons for them. Within 24 hours, Boko Haram will attack and take away all the weapons. So clearly somebody is selling the information to the enemy.
Apart from that, how worried do you think President Muhammadu Buhari will be as a former military general that this is becoming frequent? And what will you say about the Minister of Interior? I mean, he's beginning to get a badge of dishonor here that under him we've had more attacks on prisons across the country. I mean, Rauf Aregbesola, what will you say should be done? I mean, in some countries, some people have been calling for his resignation by now.
Yes, you are right. In countries where things are a bit sane, someone like that would have gone. But the issue here, for me, is not so much of probably there will be some strategic direction being given by the minister. But the problem is more low level than that. We have a situation right now where there is the massive economy out of insecurity. And, you know, somebody comes and says, this is what we need to do. You know, the system is now being rigged to favor insecurity. You know, what needs to be done, you know, to talk about intelligence, for example, I was talking about earlier. You're talking of having, I mean, in those days of special branch, the guy at the airport that's shining your shoe is an agent. The market woman, you know, selling whatever for you in the market is an agent. You know, there are agents everywhere that they gather information from. We don't have that anymore. You know, I mean,
I remember those days of CID where you will be afraid that you may have CID infiltrators within you. But that actually went with the E-branch you talked about. A lot of Nigerians have been saying that the more we have several security agencies, the better for us. But it looks like it's proven the contrary.
No, the thing is because they are not cooperating, they're competing. You see, there's something, for example, I remember a couple of years ago, I did an inspection of the police data fingerprint HQ in Lagos. Talking to the CP in charge, I asked basic questions. For example, they still check fingerprint through magnifying glass.
In this 21st century?
I'm telling you, yes, 2 years. You have filing cabinets all over the place. Then, statutorily, anybody that is imprisoned, as part of your onboarding inside the prison, you are supposed to, your fingerprint is taken and sent to that central database. He says sometimes for 6 months they will get nothing from the prison service. So, things that are in theory supposed to be happening, but not happening in practice, a lot of it is a problem here. They don't share intelligence the way they should.
And isn't that the blame of the president? I mean, how could we have a former military general having all of this? I mean, this is an audacious attempt by the Boko Haram elements, or if it's ISWAP, to send a very strong message to the presidency, because we saw his own convoy just yesterday being attacked, an assistant commissioner of police in Katsina being killed. How audacious do you think this guy can be more than what they've done?
From the attack on the prison and the one on the convoy, I mean, the movement of president's convoy, even the advance team, is not something published in the newspapers. So how did they know that that convoy would be there at that time? moles. They've been fed with information. You see, the issue here is, even this planning, if you look back, there are footprints. The pathology of such criminality is such that you will leave crumbs of footprints when you are planning, when you are buying things, when you are, but we don't aggregate this. Intelligence is the number one problem we have in this country, and I've not seen any effective way to deal with it. For example, last year, the House of Representatives brought out, did a security summit, and they brought out certain recommendations. The recommendations, in my assessment as of 2 months ago, 90% of them have not been implemented by the government, even though the report was handed over to the president.
Yeah, I remember the Speaker of the House of Rep going directly to the president and giving it to him.
Exactly.
So something is wrong at the center.
Yeah, and the service chiefs were all there when the report was handed, and they were given copies. 90% have not been implemented. And some of the things that we're seeing now, for example, take the issue of moles. The report recommended the introduction of what we call integrity testing to all frontline officers to check out the activity of moles. And there are different ways to do integrity test. One of the ways, for example, is to have your agents pretend to be Boko Haram and incentivize them to say, okay, this is what I want to do. Once they buy, that's a corrupt officer. You take him out. That by the time you do that a few times, everybody become afraid because they are not sure who they are talking to, is whether it's real Boko Haram or an undercover agent. There are ways globally to deal with moles like this, but we are not doing much of that.
Now, I think we should be looking at the immediate solutions. We have terrorists on our streets, especially in the nation's capital, Abuja now. I saw a chopper going around the capital city trying to see. Can, through that process, the terrorists be arrested? What should we do now? How can citizens help the authorities to ensure that these Boko Haram terrorist leaders that escaped from that prison facility are arrested? What should citizens be doing at the moment to help the correctional center officials to identify them? Do you think pictures should be published? What needs to be done? Because these guys are on the street everywhere.
It's very easy to disguise, even if pictures are published. The citizens can provide information, and they should. But the problem here is that, intelligence is when you bring several information together to create a pattern, and you see a pattern. And information by itself, okay, I saw this car is acting suspicious, this is the registration number. That means nothing. It's just information. It's when that plate number is reported in another place for another suspicious act, that's when I begin to see, okay, maybe there's a pattern here. That's what we don't do in Nigeria, is what I'm trying to say. For example, part of what the recommendation of the House report last year, part of the recommendation, for example, is we need to create a national helpline for people to report serious security breaches. If I live in Oyo State, in one village, and I see something that is, it's my local police that will tell, and that information resides locally there. But if something similar to what's happening is happening in Mina, my local police is not aware, the Mina police is aware that that's happening. So everything is localized. Whereas if there's a central place where these things go, begin to say, okay, this is happening in the same way, in 5 states. So clearly we begin to see a clear central picture. That we don't do. We are reactive. Our security posture in Nigeria for over a decade has been reactive. Which is something happens and then we react.
And my fear is for those who may have volunteered information to the security agencies, for these Boko Haram leaders or terrorists that were involved to have been arrested and all of that. Now, when you have them leaving such a facility and they are going around now, don't you think that those kind of persons will be afraid for their lives? Because it means that if those terrorist leaders ever get back to where they were before, then it means these people could be killed.
That actually could set back this fight by a long shot if a lot of people get afraid of that. Looking at the Kuje prison, for example, one of the basic rules is you don't gather such high-profile prisoners in one place. You disperse them. You will need to break into 21 prisons to get all your men out. That's why it should be. You don't put all of them and put them in one place. They're setting that target. These are basic assessment that should have been done.
Maybe we haven't been investing so much in our correctional centers.
Well, no, that is
and true. That just seemed to be the most secured, in quotes, correctional center in Nigeria. Unfortunately,
Yes,
it's
I mean,
obvious that
I
not.
think the correctional facilities, I mean, that this is not the first time there have been series of, and I don't think the government...
Yeah, but in smaller ones, not what looks like a major one like this.
And with the kind of weaponry used, and for how long they were there for. Again, actually, how long they were there for explains part of the problem we have. Okay, talking about solutions. Now, we need to build a better intelligence blanket over the country. But that also needs to come hand in hand with what I call, we need to build early warning systems. The early warning systems can both be both human and electronic, which means, I mean, Boko Haram, 50 of them will be riding motorcycles from the bush on the major road for 2 hours to a village, commit atrocity for 2 hours in the village, then ride 2 hours back into the bush. That's 6 hours. And we are blind. You know, there should be a situation where the moment they hit that highway coming, you know, the early warning system will say, okay, there's an unusual activity happening here, you know, and we should be able to intercept them even before they get to the first village. So we need early warning system. We need, and then thirdly, we now need what I call a quick response tactical team across the country. For example, within the...
like the SWAT.
For example, within the House Committee report I was referring to earlier, one of the major recommendations, I think the first recommendation for the government was that, you see, the police mobile force was set up as a fighting unit of the police. They were not set up to carry umbrellas or madam and all this nonsense some of them do now. You know, that's a fighting force. And they're about...
anti-riot police.
Yeah, they're roughly about 60 to 70,000 personnel there. So what we said in the report was, okay, let's take 40,000 of them. Give them 2 to 3 months specialist training. Deploy 1,000 per state. Their job is to be on standby as rapid response team for major incidents. You know, so that anywhere in the country they can reach it within 1 hour. So such things, imagine such things in existence.
Yeah,
right
but I sorry to interject here. I think that there's such a facility or an arrangement in Abuja here because having lived in the city for, I mean, so many years, I usually see the guards brigade moving around at night sometimes just to protect the city because this is the city where the president lives. And if we have such a correctional facility, which is just very close by to the city center and not very far from the Abuja International Airport, and such a thing is happening, and we don't have the elite brigade of guards, you know, maybe supporting the Nigerian Correctional Service, or even the civil defense headquarters providing personnel, additional tactical personnel to help, or even, you know, the immigration, which is very close by there. Isn't it showing that there's a very huge problem ahead of us? Because all these centers are close to that facility and they are very close to the international airport, yet this thing happened for more than 2 hours.
That's exactly my point. So where were they for those 2 hours? They were not doing it quietly. Everybody in the area knew about it. You know, I got tipped off about it within 10 minutes of the whole thing starting. You know, that some unusual noise. It was later when I found out what actually was going on. But the point is, and I don't live anywhere near there. So clearly all these people, so why did they not respond? That is a question that we need to ask. Why did they not respond? You know, what's the rule? What are the rules of engagement? You know, that has made them not to respond.
The question again is that should Nigerians be afraid for their president? Because if these things are happening, including the presidential convoy be attacked, what if it had happened to our president? How worried are you about this, and what should the National Security Advisor, who's supposed to knit all of this information, be doing at this moment?
Well, the challenge we have, number one, I'm not as afraid for Mr. President. Whenever he's physically on the ground, security is pretty tight. And sometimes Nigerians complain that some of our leaders, someone like the president, they carry too much security around him. But if they know what we know, they know he needs those security.
Yeah, but if these guys can target the president's convoy, don't you think they're getting too close for comfort?
No, well, I mean, it's possible, you know, you can't divide politics from what's going on, you know, in terms of our insecurity. The challenge, the fact is that it's a global trend. Politicians or political leaders start something, then it grows out of hand. Let me give you a pattern. In Afghanistan, Americans started training Osama bin Laden, and because it was on their side. It got to a point they could no longer control Osama bin Laden. It became a monster. Sudanese government brought the Janjaweed militia, was fighting for them. But it got to a point after they were trained and equipped, Sudanese government could no longer control the Janjaweed. We saw the atrocities they performed. Move home, in Niger Delta, the politicians brought in the thugs, armed them to help them win elections. They won the elections, then the thugs were left with weapons, they didn't know what to do. That led to what? Militants. You know, then back in the north, same thing. You know, politicians start this thing thinking this is one small thing just to help me win an election.
Being localized
exactly.
and all of that.
But when you give people weapons, by the time you win your election, they are no longer your priorities. So you leave them in there, whatever, with the weapons, then they turn to criminality.
So are you afraid also of what the Zamfara State government is proposing? I mean, to arm citizens, to hit back at the terrorists. Are you worried that if that is done, that there may be a challenge within the security system?
Being able to defend yourself is good, but I don't think we are ripe for that. Nigeria is a place where you see a lot of jungle justice, for example. Now,
if the terrorists have some leverage to kill citizens, why can't citizens have the powers to also retaliate in self-defense?
Yes, the level of enlightenment and training is needed for that to happen. I mean, for example, it means even the police that carry the weapon, many of them are not trained. Talk less of your average citizen that will not have the weapon. Where would they be trained on how to use the weapon?
People are dying every day. We're seeing this happening, including an assistant commissioner of police just being killed like that. A lot of persons are worried.
I know, but I think in terms of the way forward, I think what the government needs to do here, the way I look at it is, the government have done some things right. In terms of fiscal infrastructure, they've done a lot. In terms of increasing manpower, they're going in the right direction. You know, in terms of training our personnel, that's improving. But the one thing that I think is missing is intelligence. There is no effective national intelligence in Nigeria that gives a global view, that you know, there's no focal point. I know you mentioned the National Security Advisor. You see, one National Security Advisor, you know, on the face of it, is probably is the least accountable of all the ministers, because he's the only minister that's not
vetted. Just a special advisor.
No, what I'm saying is that that's not vetted by the Senate. That's not screened rather by the Senate. You know, by the National Assembly. So every other minister at that rank gets screened, but national security is purely at the pleasure of the president. And
so if he's failing at his duties, then it means the president is failing, right?
Well, the president can't do everything. That's the thing.
That's why he has assistants.
I understand that, but he can't do everything. And sometimes the picture the president is giving us, so you have to look at it. It's like the joke, you know, during the Second Gulf War, was that Saddam Hussein generals were telling him, "Oh, we are winning the war," when Americans were already at the airport, you know, because they want to tell him reality. So I'm not quite sure what the president is being fed.
I remember that gentleman called the Chemical Ali.
Exactly.
And all of that. Okay, as we try to round up this conversation, what more can the National Assembly do to help our security services? Because it's obvious that they are overwhelmed by some of the situation we're seeing. They are doing their best, but what sort of intervention can the National Assembly do on behalf of the people?
Well, starting not in no particular order. Clearly, there will be areas where more resources are needed. You know, and I'm sure National Assembly always do that in terms of, at least under this president, resources for the military and for the police. Number two, there's a need for massive reform of Nigerian police. You know, if police is sick, a country is sick, like a friend of mine said. You know, because a lot of this falls on the lap of the police. You know, there's a need, and that again, the president is heading in the right direction in trying to reform the police, but that money should be done on that. Number three, then we need to resolve the issue of the disparate security agencies we have in Nigeria. Many of them with overlapping mandate. You know, and that creates chaos. I mean, I'm not quite sure whether you're aware of a few years ago when the civil defense took the police to court to say police is encroaching on our turf. You know, and you know, even though the civil defense won in the High Court, but when the case was appealed, the appeal court said the police can do pretty much anything they like. You know, they are the creation of the Constitution. You are a creation of National Assembly. You know, but that just goes to show that rather than these guys cooperating, they are just competing.
Okay.
among themselves.
Actually,
so that needs to be so the issue of overlapping mandates needs to be dealt with so that there's greater clarity of who is doing what within the security estate. And then the important thing is codify this intelligence sharing. So there's no longer a matter of discretion. By law, if you don't share intelligence, you are committing a crime. That's not a crime in Nigeria at the moment.
okay.
You can choose to share, you can choose not to
And
share.
lastly, how do we protect our prisons more? We've seen this prison break almost every now and then. The new fad in town is prison attack. I mean, people coming from outside. It's no longer from inside, people wanting to break away, but people coming from outside with dynamite, bombs, all sort of things. I mean, GPMGs, RPGs, and all of that. And
So,
it's become worrisome.
There
How
are
do we
many.
protect
There are ways to safeguard the prisons. I wouldn't want to go to details of that in a public forum like this. But the important thing is we need to have what I call strategic prisons. You know, when the prison service was put together and became a federal service in the 60s, you know, that meant prison existed all over the country. You need to have what I call strategic prisons, and you must always disperse your high-profile prisoners. You mustn't put all of them in one place. You know, and there are certain proactive steps that can be taken for them to know what's going on. For example, I'm 100% certain, even though, I mean, you know, my experience and training has taught me this, 100% certain that the Boko Haram prisoners in Kuje prison knew that attack was coming. What does that mean? It meant they would have been visited by people who alerted them, okay, on so this is what we are planning. You know, why didn't we pick it up? So there's so many ways, you know, that if you're a prisoner, even if you breathe, the authorities should know. So there's a need for better control of information flow to prisoners,
okay.
among other things.
We must thank you so much. Dr. Charles Omole is the National Security Advisor to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and a member of the Presidential Working Group on Police Reforms in Nigeria. We must thank you for being on the show, and we just hope that the authorities are listening. I can tell you a lot of citizens in the nation's capital, Abuja residents, are not feeling comfortable because with these guys let loose, no one knows how safe they can be until these terrorists are rearrested. But we must thank you for helping us enlighten our viewers and providing some solutions to the authorities.